Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's NSCAA Hangout. I'm Monique, and I'm the association's communications manager and today's moderator. So the 2016 NSCAA Convention is coming up, and it'll be here before we know it. And it's an opportunity to equip your coaching arsenal and learn from top-notch clinicians from all over the world. Now, it's also an opportunity to expand your network and perhaps even find your next coaching position. So that's what we'll be discussing today. Our panelists today sharing their knowledge. One, Tess Surprenant, Director of Career Services at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And then we also have Andrew Donnery, CEO of the Fremont Youth Soccer League. And they'll be providing their tips and ideas for your resume as well as your networking skills. So with our Hangouts, if you're new or haven't watched in a long time, please feel free to send us questions. One of two ways you can send them in. You can email them in to marketing@nscaa.com, or you can tweet them using the official convention hashtag, which is hashtag B, the letter B, more NSCAA. That's hashtag B, more NSCAA. So we'll try to address as many as we can on air. If you get them in on time. So let's kind of jump into today's conversation. First, let's get a little bit about our panelists' background as well as your past experience with the NSCAA Convention. And Tess, we'll start with you.
Hi, Monique. So my name is Tess Surprenant, and I'm, as Monique had said, the Director of Career Services for the Block School of Management at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And I've been doing career services now for about 12 years. And prior to that, I'd actually worked in industry. So I've got that experience of having worked and recruited and hired on a business side, but then also preparing students for those roles also. I've been involved with the NSCAA. I do some of the internship learning components where I help the interns that work at the NSCAA prepare their resumes and prepare for their job search. I also have done a workshop at the convention on marketing yourself and preparing your resume. So that's my experience.
Great. And Andrew, get a little bit about yourself.
My name is Andrew Donnery. Good evening and good afternoon and good morning to you all, regardless of where you are. My background has always been in youth soccer and has always been around the great sport that we actually have. I started as a professional player, played in college, played professional, came over to the States about 15 years ago, and now I run and consult with many different clubs around the country. I also help the NSCAA with their courses, teaching people how to run soccer clubs.
Great. Did you mention your convention experience?
Over the last 2 years, I presented at the convention, and every year the Advanced AOC and the Master Coach Diploma that we put on for the NSCAA, we finish with our grand finales at the convention this year.
Gotcha. Thank you. Going back to Tess, so when doing or revising a resume, what are the keys to a great resume, and what are the differences between other industries, what people might find online, and maybe the coaching profession?
So there's certain things that I think are universal across all professions that you should consider on your resume. And the first thing is neat, organized, well laid out, and error-free. So I think that that's the first thing that you should be thinking about is really making sure no typos, no misspelled words, no formatting errors. Just really make sure that it's neat and tidy and perfect. In some industries, it's very important to have a one-page resume. In some areas, you can have more pages. I would say in general, though, keep it short. If you're going over 2 pages, you probably need to do a little bit of editing. Mm-hmm. And the earlier you are in your career, the shorter your resume should be. So at the most 2 pages. But having said that, those are sort of the universals. I think sometimes that people forget if you're applying for a coaching position, you might have different categories on your resume than if you were applying for more of a business type experience. So you would have probably education, where you would talk about your college education if you've gone to a university, and you might have a work experience, but very likely you would have a coaching experience where you talk specifically about the coaching roles that you've had. You definitely want to have a section that would talk about licenses and certifications, where you would talk about the different training that you would take. So make sure that you're tailoring your resume for the audience that's receiving it. And if you're applying for a coaching position, you need to put those credentials on your resume someplace.
And what are some of the myths that coaches should stay away from when it comes to?
So the biggest thing that I would say on resume writing, the myth is trying creative things on your resume to make it stand out because it looks funky or creative. And overwhelmingly, people say that they don't like that. And it's actually pretty crucial if you're applying to a system that uses what they call an applicant tracking system, which is if you upload your resume into their job board system. Those jobs boards, they don't read weird resumes very well. So if you've got a colored bar down the side, if you've got your information in a specific template, it's going to come across very jumbled to the applicant tracking system. So it'll look weird when they print it out. And when that system tries to pull information from the resume, it makes a mess of it. So it's best just to do simple Word document, no formatting, none of the templated formatting, but doing the formatting just using tabbing and the simple bold and simple italics. So no weird.
No weird. Makes sense. Andrew, I do want to have you chime in on this as well. When developing a resume, what should go on a coaching resume? What makes a great coaching resume?
Well, the first thing is, from every presentation, every presenter that comes on the NSCAA, we always learn something. I have a 5-page resume, so my first email will be back to Tess to try and
I can get it down to 2.
Exactly. Because every good soccer coach wants to tell you how great they are, which we all understand. Regarding the resume, and recently I am CEO of a club in Northern California called Elk Grove Soccer. We opened up a DOC position, and we received 96 applicants. And I received 96 resumes, which is an interesting few weeks when you receive that amount of resumes. To me, and I know Tess is the professional in this, but as an employer on my side, it's important how it looks. I also feel that you have to know your audience. The person on the end that you're sending it to, I know maybe it's different with Tess's. Maybe there's not an individual, maybe it goes to a committee, and sometimes it may just go to Tess. But in my world, it came to me. So it's very important for the person writing the resume to understand the nature of the club, to understand the nature of the individual that they're actually sending it to. The next thing I would say is to know yourself. No matter how hard we try, and I don't know what the statistic is about some things that are on resumes that are false, but if you put yourself out there to do something and you're trying to manipulate your experience, then it becomes a no straight away, because many people can see through that part of the resume.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Can I just chime on to that? Because I think Andrew's just made an amazingly great point that I think it seems obvious, but I think a lot of times people forget is you need to really tailor your resume to the job that you are applying to, the specific job that you are applying to. So knowing about that club that you're applying to, is it big, is it small, is it, what age groups are you looking at, and really tailoring your experience to fit the job that you're applying to. Andrew, if you've looked at 90-some resumes, you probably know what I'm talking about here. I get resumes all the time where I don't understand why they are applying to my job, because what's on the resume bears no resemblance to what I'm looking for in the job description. I want somebody to actually paint that picture for me and tell me why they would be a good fit.
Makes sense. Andrew, did you have something else too?
Yeah, it is an interesting point, and I understand and you try, every time you do one of these presentations or a course, you try and put yourself back in the frame of, if it's a 24-year-old coach, we recently hired a 24-year-old coach, so they send their resume in, and I read through the resume, and some parts it's light, but if you send the resume in for a DOC position of a high-level club, high-level teams, but there's some part of it that says, I may not have ever been at the level that you're trying to get, or I may not have the experience, but I've done this, this, and this. And the other thing when a resume is put together is, I don't really need to know what your duties are, specifically to youth soccer clubs or college. I know you manage players, I know you manage parents, and I know everyone puts a curriculum together, whether we take it from the internet and put our logo on, or whether you create your own. I need to know what you actually do. I had a problem with a parent here, this is a situation, I solved it there. So if that's not in a resume, and it's a generic resume, organized parents, organized soccer clubs, travel with teams, then I'm on to the next one. But if someone puts something pertinent, I helped develop and build a $2 million fundraising expedition that involved me building a soccer complex. Oh, okay, you're different than this person.
Andrew, do you want to come and teach some resume writing program over here? Because if I could get people to do that, rather than just list a task, say the significance of what you were doing. What was the impact of it? I would rather see fewer bullet points that actually describe the significance of the work that you did, rather than seeing 8 bullet points with just listing tasks without any outcomes, without anything measurable, without any significance to it. So
now we had this question listed for a little later on, but since the conversation's kind of going that way, and Andrew, I'm going to direct this to you, and then Tess will go back to you, because I think you both have something to add to it. You mentioned, Andrew, earlier, those coaches who are applying for that position that they're not quite there yet, but they want to be, and they have some other maybe supporting duties or experience. So what are you looking for when you're thinking outside the box? Like, this person's not exactly what I'm looking for, but I like their potential on paper at least.
To tie into the network that we're probably going to go to in a minute, is that you have once you start to move up that ladder of positional structure within youth soccer, then people will seek you out and say, I have a club of 200 people. Do you know someone who's good enough to do this job? We need someone local. So the network of individuals that represent themselves in front of you becomes a huge network of potential hires. If an individual doesn't have the necessary coaching qualifications or the necessary background and experience, for example, if you apply to go and work in a high-level club and it says you need an A license, you need a bachelor's degree, master's preferable, and you don't have an A license but you write in and say I have an F license, then I may just put you to one side. If it's something quirky, and I know Tess's opinion on quirky, but if it's something on there that I see, the fact that you may have started on the advanced DOC a few years ago, we had people that started a grassroots program and went in and did this, started a futsal program. If there's something there that maybe I see the resume and say, well, okay, he doesn't quite have the coaching qualification I need, but we're ready to start a futsal program. We're ready to go and do an outreach program. Maybe I can give them 2 or 3 teams and they could do a fundraising or an outreach program. There are many different facets of youth soccer clubs and even professional clubs where there are certain qualities and a certain feel you get from reading a resume.
Gotcha. Tess, anything to add to that?
I think that's a really good point of being able to highlight certain things in your past that apply to the job that you're applying for. Because, to be honest, as an employer, you probably are sometimes hesitant to hire somebody who's got the exact perfect experience, because it means that either that's a lateral move for that person or it's a step down. Mm-hmm. And that employee probably long-term is going to be frustrated in a lateral or a step down position. So even though we're looking for certain skills and qualities that we state, we also understand that that for the person who's a go-getter, who's got some experience, and who can articulate how that experience that they have translates to the position that they're applying to, I mean, that's really a great candidate, because you know that then they're moving forward in their career, they're going to be excited and challenged. So definitely I'd say feel comfortable applying for a position where you meet some, but maybe not 100% of the qualifications that they're looking for, but really be able to talk about how your experience in the past prepares you to do most, if not all, of the responsibilities that are in the posted job.
Okay. Before we move on to the networking piece, I want to talk a little bit about cover letters. There's a nice little side from Tess. And Andrew, you're already kind of going through the hiring process. So can we just talk a little bit about cover letters, their what they do, and in comparison to the actual resume? Tess, you want to take that?
Well, so in talking to people who do recruiting, who do hiring, it's about 50-50. Some people say they don't even read them. So they expect you to send one, but you spend time writing it, but they're not going to spend time reading it. Some people say they put a lot of weight on the cover letter. I always tell people, write one, because you just don't know who you're getting. You might be getting the person who wants one. So definitely write one, be very careful, and again, no errors, and again, tailor it to the job. Nobody wants to get a cover letter that is just this generic cover letter that you send to everybody. It's the exact same letter. So make sure that it makes sense, that it's tailored for the position that you're applying to. I don't know, Andrew, have you been reading all 96 of yours?
Some people send some stuff with cover letters, some people don't. My own personal experience, ironically, my phone is sitting next to me, and my local soccer club is actually looking for the technical director, and the person who's phoned is actually looking for the technical director. But I'm sure it will come out shortly where that club is, so if you know where I live. So moving on from that, the thing about the cover letter, my own personal experience, it's about 4, 5, 6 years ago. The MLS is doing a phenomenal job in the US, and I think soccer's moving in a phenomenal direction under their stewardship. My idea was I would segue and go and have a look at an option of working in MLS. So a job comes available. I then begin to research the individuals that would be on the hiring committee. And it's tying into your network. And it's going back to the cover letter. So I then realized that an individual I'd worked with in Colorado grew up, went to university with one of the people who were hiring. I then looked into the other individual's background, realized they'd worked in a college, he'd been an assistant coach, and was best man at the head coach's wedding. So in the cover letter, when I was putting the cover letter, I did a quick little overview of my experience, but actually tied in the name of the individual where I'd linked in with the experience and worked with, and it was 2 people who were also on my reference, which was, I got permission to do that. But whether that was a connection, then you get the phone call for the interview.
Great. Thank you. Again, one more question to Andrew before we move on to the networking piece. And this is from Brian C. via email. What is the typical resume CV of a person who's going for the DOC or CEO position in a club look like? In addition to soccer knowledge, what academic and professional background is generally expected?
Not to give you a question to the question that you've just asked. It depends on the size of the club. It depends on the location of the club. The size of the club, it depends on, is a big part of your financial resources. So if I'm paying a DOC 6 figures, say, and there are DOCs that are paid 6 figures, then the level of job and the level of experience and knowledge required to earn a 6-figure salary in youth soccer excels a resume all the way up there to the highest that we have in the US. So if we take that level, there's got to be a very good reason why you don't have an A license. There's got to be a very good reason why you haven't been a DOC, depending on the size, of a 1,000-person club before. Do you understand the community that you're coming into? Do you have a network of individuals that will vouch for you and say you can do a job at this particular level? a big part of me, and whether it's right or wrong, and Tess would be a better individual to say whether it's right, but I look at that level, I look at the references. And if there are individuals, everyone's heard of 6 degrees of separation. In soccer, I'd say it's about 5 degrees, because everyone, once you get to a certain level, everyone knows everyone. So the references, I look at the outlay, I look at the design, at the curb appeal, and the next thing I look at is the references. If you've got high-level references, then I keep reading your resume.
Well, and I'd like to add on to the references piece, because I think sometimes people don't think of the strategic value of who they list as their references. And first of all, keep in mind that if you list this person as a reference, you're saying that this person has full right to say whatever they want about me. So if I'm doing a background check and I call your former employer somebody you haven't listed as a reference, really they're only going to say, yes, they were employed here, start date, end date, approximate job title, sort of thing. If you say, I can contact this person as a reference, you're saying that this person can say, what type of employee I was, did I work well with others, was I a good leader. This person can make all sorts of pretty specific comments about you, and because you've given them permission to.
Gotcha.
So think very carefully about that, but tailor your references just as you tailor your resume and you tailor your cover letter. Tailor your references to the job that you are applying to. So, and Andrew made a perfect example of it. If you find out that certain people are on the search committee for a position, then pick references that know those people and that they're going to feel comfortable talking to, that can say good things about you. So don't just stick with those 3 people that have been your list of references from the time you graduated from college. Really be strategic about who you're listing, because it is going to make a big difference to the person who's looking at your list of references, because they'll think, oh, this person knows the right people.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing about references as well, I have a very good reference called Ian. And the job that I recently went ahead with a year ago, Ian is one of those references. So it's also the person who's actually making the call about the reference and the person who's actually delivering the reference, and how secure you are in your position as an individual and how comfortable you are with that individual talking exactly about who you are, what you are, and what to them expect. My reference states in the conversation, Andrew is opinionated. Andrew is, which is perfectly okay, because I am. Andrew is opinionated. Get out of Andrew's way. He'll work with you, but he knows where he wants to go, and he will get there. That reference, as good as it is for me in my position, can be fairly damning for another individual. Because if the person on the other end is an understanding of they want that type of person, or they want someone who's just going to say yes to them, then I've lost that job. The conversation with the reference can occur and say, how honest do you want me to be? And I'm like, no, people know who I am, what I am. Some like me, some don't, and that's okay. But I think in order to go into those positions, you have to understand who the person is asking for the reference.
Makes sense. So what I'm hearing for the references is maybe a screening, not so much a screening process, but just when you're asking, may I list you as a reference, is this something you're comfortable with? Are you able to, do you know enough about me to speak on my behalf on this particular position?
Well, and that's a really interesting question, too, because I think a lot of times people list references without telling their reference that they listed them as a reference. So the first step is contact the person that you want to list as a reference and say just exactly that. Would you be comfortable if I used you as a reference for this position where I'm applying to this person? And then, if somebody asks me to be a reference for them, I always ask them, what do you want me to talk about? What are the three things that you really want me to draw upon from our experience that you think sells you for the position? They'll tell me, and sometimes like, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to talk about that point, but yeah, I can cover these other 2 points. So I want to have that conversation with them because I want to help them if at all possible.
And another red flag regarding references is if I don't see a reference from one of your ex-employers, then I'm wondering why. Because everyone, as much as you go to your references, everyone wants to see the Ians of this world, the Matt Robinsons of this world, the Jill Ellises of this world, the high-level individuals, because it adds a little bit of star quality. Just got a LinkedIn message, someone invite me to connect. Everyone wants to see the star quality and put the individuals down. But if my reference Ian hasn't worked with me in a capacity of what the job's going to work at, then what's the point in putting Ian down or John or Jill? There's no, apart from do you know this person? Yes. Have they ever worked with you? No, we had coffee at the convention, though, or they came on a course. That doesn't give me anything substantial that I need to go forward.
Makes sense. All right. All right, so let's roll into networking. And it's like, I don't want to say it's a buzzword, but it's something that a lot of people get, but maybe some people don't get or don't understand. So how important is it to network both when you're job hunting and out of job hunting? And Tess, I'll throw it to you first.
Oh, I cannot enforce this more. Go out and network. Build your network. Build your professional network. Go out and talk to people. Be curious about people. Find out what they do. Find out what works for them, what their challenges have been. Don't necessarily view it as I'm getting to know this person because this person might be able to get me a job. Look at it as these people are in my profession, and I am curious and interested to learn more about them. And then, at some later point, it might help you in getting a job. But don't start it from that perspective. But so important, especially in the soccer world, because it is a tight little community, and so important.
Andrew, your thoughts?
I'm going to come up with something quirky just for Tess. I've thought of something, and I've tried to put, I have a good colleague of mine who I work with quite a lot, and he hates networking. He doesn't think it's beneficial and just hates the whole concept of networking, which is okay. So I've come up with spam clubs. One of my references may wonder about the word spam. We had a conversation, but that's a whole different situation. So spam clubs I've come up with. How do you start? What's the plan? What happens after we network? Is it all about me? The czar, which I'll get to, the link, you to them, the bridge, and the spell. So I'm going to go into them a little bit further. The start, what happens before, everyone's going to go to the convention. The convention is good for a variety of different reasons. So, before I get there, I'm going to network. I'm going to be at this social event. What's the plan? If I arrive with a bunch of resumes, people scare me silly if anyone walks up with a resume and gives me a resume in my hand. I want to get to know you. There's got to be something else. If you're just there for your own self-serving interest, people will begin to see through that.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And so beyond a firm handshake and just handing out your resume, what makes a person good at networking? Andrew, I'll give it to you first.
Being good at networking, I was trying to think about this last night. What makes you good at networking? I think you've got to be comfortable in a social environment. Mm-hmm. We all come from all different walks of life. My initial upbringing, I'm an only child. So being an only child, you have to make friends. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to talk to other people. There are many other things in my background which enable me to be comfortable in that. But there are times where you have to step outside of your social network. You become a business leader. You work in a different environment. I live in Silicon Valley, so I spend a lot of my time with people from Silicon Valley. So the one common denominator we all have at the convention is soccer. That goes for the most part when I work in that world. So what else can I talk about? What else can I bring to the table besides, I'm a soccer coach. I have an A license. Many people may not know what that means.
Mm.
So in order to be a good networker, I think you have to be a great communicator. And one of the big parts of networking is, what's my plan? You have the network event, what's my plan at the convention?
Mm-hmm.
And then as shallow as you may be, your plan may be for your own personal gain, which I get. But a big part of networking is just maybe linking two people.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're generous in your networking skills, then the karma always comes back. But if you look at the professional long-term plan, and we may have a few young coaches here, okay, where do I want to coach? Do I want to coach at the MLS? Then I begin to draw up a stepway of plan of what gets me there. I may be a club coach, and I may live in San Jose. If I'm living in San Jose, do I know anyone who's at the Earthquakes? How do I get into the network? Do I play at a particular club? Do I coach at a club? That coach is connected. And then that way you begin to draw up a plan of how you move your career forward.
Love those. Tess, anything to add to being a good networker?
I'm just going to build upon that. So again, when you're networking, it's not about you. It's not about what you're going to get out of that conversation. It's about building that connection with people. And I know that, I mean, the convention's huge. And if you're somebody and you do feel maybe uncomfortable reaching out to people, introducing yourself to people, I do think that it's important to go to convention with a plan that says, for every one of the workshops that I'm going to meet somebody. I'm going to introduce myself to somebody. I am not going to just hang out with the people that I know. I'm going to make a point of making new contacts. And maybe that's after the presentation, going up and saying to the presenter, you know, that was a really interesting discussion. Thanks so much for sharing. I had a question about, or I thought that one of the points that you made was specifically applicable to some of the experience I've had, and start that conversation. Mm-hmm. Or as you're sitting there, introduce yourself to the people sitting on either side of you. You're sitting there waiting for the presentation to start, or at the end of the presentation, you're collecting your things. And start up a conversation with that person. You never know where it's going to lead, and that's okay. But get a name, get some contact information, follow up with them with a quick email later, or invite them to link in with you saying, hey, I really enjoyed meeting you at the convention. So it's too easy, I think, just to go, sit, leave, go talk to your friend, and not make those connections.
Right. So since we're kind of led into that convention conversation, so what tips do you have? You both have experience, you know, going to convention. What tips do you have for someone who's, you know, going for the first time in a long time, or someone who's been going consistently but maybe wants to spruce up their experience, especially when it comes to networking and maybe job seeking and stuff like that? Tess?
Again, talk to as many people as possible. And if you are a job seeker, let people know that you're looking for opportunities, but don't start out with that. Get to know somebody first, and then you can bring it up in the conversation that, you know, I'm looking to make a change, or I'm just finishing school and I'm looking for that first position. And I know that sometimes people oftentimes will follow up with, well, what are you looking for? And I think too often candidates or job seekers say, you know, I'll take anything. You know, it's a tough job market. I need to find, especially young people just finishing up school, you know, I'm open to anything. And I would advise, be a little bit more specific. Even if you don't want to zero in too much, you can say, you know, I'm looking for a coach position with a club. I particularly like to work with youth, or with, you know, slightly older players, or my long-term goal is, because it gives the person on the other end something to pursue the conversation with. If you say, I'm open to anything, then you're putting the burden on the other person to really draw more information out of you. And that's not their responsibility. So be kind of specific, but open to opportunities.
Great. Andrew, attending convention, what tips do you have to navigating that event?
I think the convention is a great place to meet and see new people. The one downside is it's a huge event, and there are many things going on at many different times. So if you're there to educate yourself. One, you're there to become a better coach or a better administrator. But then the next part, and I'd say back down to the initial plan, is my time best spent meeting new people, getting new contacts, linking new people with each other, or am I there and what's the mixture of it? Is it all about education? And I think that's the hard thing for many is that, and also it's, different people can be linked together. You at the convention, I would move away, and many people who listen to this go to the convention. There is part of the convention which doesn't serve you any interest. That is sometimes afterwards where you stay in your own little group, and you may go to a local restaurant or a bar and you stay in your own little group. How many times do you actually go outside of your individual group where you then make new friends, or you go over here because it's different? If you're just following the crowd, you just become the crowd. If you're actually doing different things as an individual, then it may be far more beneficial to do those than just follow the crowd.
And Andrew, just your opinion, why do you think it's important for a coach to attend the convention, whether you're job hunting or not, just in general?
I think with the convention is, I think, one, it gives you a great talking point. I think too many times now, for the good or the bad, we've got social culture. I can meet a variety of people sitting in my laptop and never leaving my office. But it still doesn't feel like I'm meeting people. If I'm developing relationships, whether I meet people for coffee, lunch, I go to the golf course, wherever I'm doing, if I'm out there, I'm actually meeting people. It's a lot easier, in my opinion, going to those events and meeting people socially around a common theme than just from your own little world that you exist in. Because I understand the comfy slipper syndrome, where I don't want to go out and do that. For many, and the networking part, they may not have an interest. If I'm going to work in my own little town for the rest of my life, doing my own little job, then it's not needed. But I've yet to meet many soccer people who don't have that drive to push on and become the next best coach in the world.
Makes sense. Tess, did you have anything to add to that by chance?
I was just amazed by the convention. It's huge, obviously, but even in, I do career coaching at a university, and yet I went to the convention, sat in on a wide variety of the different programs and seminars, and learned so much, and so much that actually I was even able to take back to my own work, just because so much of it's transferable, and they have great speakers. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I would highly encourage anybody to go. But I do think that it's sort of this fascinating experience, because everybody there has some interest in soccer from some perspective, whether it's a vendor or a coach or a student. Everybody there has an interest in something you have an interest in, and so what a wonderful opportunity to really get to know people from all aspects of the industry.
Absolutely. One last question. It's submitted by Steve Davis at New York Rush, and he asked, going back to the resume conversation, how do you feel about electronic resumes such as Adobe Slate and/or using video in a resume?
I think that there's some people who say the traditional resume is dead, and so we need to move to these new technologies, and I'm not going to have a traditional resume. I think that it's morphing, and I think that at some point the traditional resume may be dead, but it's not there yet. I would say absolutely. I love the idea of a video resume. I love the idea of maybe having an online portfolio type resume as a supplement to your traditional resume, because most organizations still want you to submit a document that they can either read on the screen or print out. So I think they're great, but don't rely on them solely.
Thanks. Andrew, any thoughts on electronic or video resumes?
Yes, I actually know Steve, so Steve's a great guy and a phenomenal
Okay.
coach, and he runs a good club. It's not a stage question, by the way, though.
Good.
With Steve's situation, if Steve sends me a resume and I don't know Steve, and he puts together a normal PDF or Word document and he sends me the resume, Steve also, as many other coaches around the country have, they have went above and beyond and done things in their club that have been special. So if Steve puts a link to his YouTube training program that he set up at the Rush and the whole package that came along with that, then all of a sudden, in my opinion, I click his link in his resume, it sends me off to the YouTube page. That becomes powerful. As part of the resume package, I understand the cover letter, I understand having the resume, but if you're giving me add-ons, which Steve would give me, or we also had another individual that sent in a plan for the club, long-term development plan, if those things are there, then I move towards you before I move towards just a generic resume just on a piece of paper.
Perfect. All right. Well, we are at a little past our time, but Andrew and Tess, thank you both so much for your wonderful expertise today. It was a lot of great information, and luckily we still have about 12 weeks to prepare ourselves and our resumes for convention. Just as a reminder, registration for convention is open and online, so make sure to join us. You can register online at nsca.com/convention. We have a lot of great stuff coming up and a lot of new stuff as well. So we had the U30 Coaches Experience for those young coaches who starting out in your career maybe need a little bit of a push, maybe a little bit of guidance at convention and throughout the year. We have our U30 Coaches Experience. We also have our Now Hiring event, which is a 3-in-1 event. It's a job board. I believe it's, sorry, I should know this. I should have put in my notes. But 2 other events kind of wrapped up into one that you can take advantage at convention. And then there's also the Assistant Coach Development Workshop, as well as a host of other things. So again, if you go to nsca.com/convention, all that information is there. And make sure to also check back quite often because we add more information, presenters, details regularly. So again, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in January. Again, Tess, Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.